It's the inaugural record release from Discograffiti. Metal Machine Muzak is a slanted tribute to Lou Reed's divisive 1975 double LP Metal Machine Music. Lester Bangs called it the greatest album ever made, but no matter how it hits you, it's always been the ultimate music freak's secret handshake. My ambient reimagining features 4 16-minute, 1-second tracks, just like the original, and each one was created by a top-shelf indie rock visionary. Lou Barlow from Dinosaur Jr. and Sebadoh, Corey Hansen from Wand, W. Cullen Hart from the Olivia Tremor Control, and Mark Robinson from Unrest. That's right, not a slouch in the bunch, unlike 99% of the compilations you've ever begrudgingly purchased for the one and only band on it you just had to hear. Metal Machine Muzak will not be available on streaming. The digital version is finally available for purchase, and the vinyl will be shipped this summer. Pre-orders for the LPs are available now, but they're going fast. They're being produced in a very limited edition run of 300 numbered 180-gram metallic silver double LP gatefold copies, only 100 of which can be ordered online. These copies will be numbered from 1 to 100, and they're first come, first served. To order either the digital or the vinyl, just head over to patreon.com/discograffiti/shop. Again, that's patreon.com/discograffiti/shop. Don't miss out on Metal Machine Muzak, the ambient experience designed to make Brian Eno run screaming.
I borrowed my dad's car, and I get this message. I've been driving my dad's car around. I'm getting this text, Chris, there might be something in the car. You should look under the mat. And my dad thinks he left some heroin in the car. It's like, he's ready for me to go to prison for him. You know, like he waited like weeks to tell me this. I'm driving his car around, and it's like that kind of shit where I was just like, okay, I'm done. So as I'm writing all these songs, it's just like, felt insane at that point to be like, okay, I'm not going to be like evasive when I talk about this record. I'm not going to like beat around the bush and say, oh, you know, it's about my family. It was like, I'm done covering for them and with being discreet.
Welcome to Discograffiti, the Music Obsessives podcast that gives freaks like you and me the chance to connect with a brotherhood obsessed with rating the entire discography of every single artist and band that ever mattered. I'm your host, Dave Gebroe, and with 3 to 4 episodes each week, you're going to gain a comprehensive knowledge of an act's history and output in the time it takes to listen to one album. Each new guest swings a hard left into an area you either had no idea you needed to know about or know all about and can't believe you're not alone out there. I support a wife and a 5-year-old son with Discograffiti as my sole source of income, so if you love the show and this episode, please Venmo me a tip at David-Gebroe. That's Gebroe. My guess is you probably stuff $1 into a tip jar when you buy a muffin. Please then, gauge the worth of this podcast side by side with simply being handed a muffin. It'll be completely crucial to this show to receive even $1 from you right now. My family and I thank you. And in this episode, we'll be turning our spray cans on Chris Cohen! Along with our special guest, Chris Cohen himself. In part 2 of this special doubleheader, here's just some of the many things Chris and I touch on in this podcast. How his creative process fundamentally shifted for the construction of his brilliant new album, Paint a Room, a shockingly bare and extremely in-depth discussion of his father's addictions and indiscretions and the trauma that created for Chris, which was then funneled into the autobiographical bravery of his third album, and a song-by-song analysis of both Paint a Room and 2019's self-titled LP. If you're a Chris Cohen superfan like me, you'll want to turn this free version off right now and opt for the ultimate major cut of this episode on our Patreon page, which features 27 additional minutes of essential material, including overviews of entire releases. It's literally twice the length of the publicly available version. And you can find it in our Patreon shop for mere pennies at patreon.com/discograffiti/shop. Or just subscribe for access to the complete versions of all our shows. Longer cuts are on the Lieutenant tier, and our longest ultimate cuts, they're on the Major tier. Even if you're on the fence, just head over there because it's finally free to become a basic member. Coming up, we've got Tom Morello rating the MC5, a career-spanning interview with the Beatles' Pete Best, Robert Schneider rating the Strawberry Alarm Clock, and a massive, many-guested launch into the Beach Boys' entire catalog. So don't miss out. Open up your listening app right now and subscribe. And away we go then! So 2016 becomes kind of a banner year for you because you provide some drums and production on Wise Blood's Front Row Seat to Earth. Is that what actually allows your career in music as a day job to unfurl so you can put all these, waiting tables and Thai restaurant jobs behind you?
Yeah, I think so. I would say that.
It's a phenomenal record. 2018, the Edit Out single comes out, which is the first glimpse into the self-titled record, which I'm very much looking forward to talking with you about. So 2019, the eponymous Chris Cohen record comes out on Captured Tracks. First thing I got to ask you about is when somebody releases a self-titled record, it usually is fraught with all kinds of import, meaning this is who I am. I'm so curious, knowing the story, this is kind of a song cycle. Why is your name the title of the record?
Yeah, I think it's something like what you said there. I was trying to just be more upfront. Yeah, I just hadn't done it yet. And I'm like, everybody's got a self-titled album.
It sets the bar for lyrical honesty so high because you've had two records where it's, I think, pretty fair to say that you have utilized a sort of lyrical impressionism to convey that aspect of your music. And then all of a sudden, and I remember reading the very first time what the record, what it was really about. And, that really blew me away because I was at that point used to your music being these sort of flashes of feelings or flashes of moods, but not specific. Describing a sensation, so to speak, or just playing it close to the vest. But your third solo album was...
Could we backtrack for a second? Because
sure.
You brought up the lyrics being more obvious what they were about and the obliqueness, I guess, of the earlier ones. I had something to say about that. I think if that's okay, can we go back?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. We can.
As far as my family story, really like the origin, my story as a person, I guess. I felt like I was torn between, revealing something against someone else's wishes, my dad's wishes, and being like true to myself and honest, in what I was trying to say. And I actually really wasn't sure how to approach that. I took a kind of more conservative approach, I think, which was to sort of talk about my family stuff in an oblique way. And then after a while, it was like, okay, well, by the time I made the third record, it was like, I hadn't talked to my dad in a couple of years. My dad and I don't speak anymore. He's still around. But during the making of As If Apart, my parents were splitting up. Then there was a couple of years. By the time I made the third record, it was like, my dad had sort of like done all this stuff that I kind of just ended my relationship with him because it was just too toxic for me. And it was kind of a relief in a way to just be like, okay, it's not my job to like hide my dad's secrets for him. I'm not like, not to say that it's my job to like reveal my dad's secrets or something, but at that time he was kind of coming out of the closet in a way. He was starting to.
Do you mind just for 1 second, for those who are listening, if they're a little bit lost as to the concrete facts about what we're talking about? Your parents, and correct me if I'm wrong here, your parents were married for 53 years. And your dad spent most of his life in the closet with his sexual orientation and various drug addictions. And then it came to the surface. But this was a while back, and I'm not sure what happened between the unveiling of that and then the divorce, but is that basically what was the situation?
Yeah, right. Yeah. My dad's addictions were kind of just spiraling to the point of like, we had to get my mom out of there to sort of protect her. My dad was like spending, they were like, how do I say this? Like her, retirement was disappearing and stuff. And it reached the point where, sorry, I'm trying to remember your question. Sorry. Can you ask that again? We're just trying to orient people to the...
So I wanted to orient people who are listening to what we're talking about, but also I want to just touch on one thing, which is that I don't feel like the self-titled record, you're coming out and just laying things out matter-of-factly, kind of like Bob Dylan writing John Wesley Harding as a corrective for Blonde on Blonde, like, let's just lay it out bluntly. I don't think it's like that at all. I think actually that you're writing about very concrete, factual matters of the heart in an impressionistic way. That's how it hit me anyway. I don't think it deviated from the style of writing. Now we're talking about basically a song cycle, in a sense, a concept album about very concrete things. And the press cycle for you, I don't know if it was relieving of a burden or if you were like, what the fuck have I done? Because now, every single interview is about your dad and you got to talk about it over and over and over again. Was that torturous or relieving?
No, that wasn't torturous. I mean, honestly, like this record felt like a kind of a relief to me just to be like, okay, I don't have to like cover this up anymore. I mean, everybody's got problems. Everybody has their issues. I was just trying to be truthful to myself. And like, I hope that I was being kind to everybody involved. Yeah. I just felt like a relief. I could finally just be like honest about what the songs were about because people would ask me. And
was he begging you not to? Did you tell him beforehand, I'm making a record about what has happened?
I mean, I didn't think the record was about him. I mean, I guess that's kind of the thing. I'm saying to me, this record was about myself, but being honest about the real origins of it was mostly a way of investigating myself and like my relationships and my ideas of family. And I wasn't trying to tell my dad's story. So I hope that I didn't do that in a way that was unfair to him. I've talked to my dad once, I think in like maybe 7 years or something. And this wasn't something we talked about. Honestly, my dad is proud of me as far as I know. He's proud that I'm a musician and I don't think he's got anything to hide anymore. And hey, everybody's got their shit.
Listen, life is complicated. I want you to know that I'm picking up a little bit of, I don't know if you've been out of it's been 5 years since you've been in that press cycle, and I know you're probably not used to talking about this anymore. And so I'm sure there's an aspect of discomfort around it, even though you've dealt with it in a way that I can only deem successful. But I also want you to know that this is my favorite of your records. I think it's a total fucking masterpiece. When I first read about it, my jaw dropped. Everything about it, the self-titled thing, which I thought, appending that to an incredibly honest work of art was a real, in a sense, ballsier than talking about this thing with your dad, because now there was going to be, potentially this self-imposed pressure about constantly meeting the demand of being self-revelatory. So I thought that was ballsy, and I thought the songs had a clarity to them that even your best work before, I mean, I'm talking about the use of instrumentation, the arranging, even the crispness of the sound had reached, to my ears, a new level. So, I don't mean to, put you on the spot.
No, thank you. That's okay. Yeah. That's okay. I appreciate it. I don't feel, you're right. I mean, there is some discomfort about it, but it's also like, I think it's cool. I was up for the challenge and I really thought about it a lot. And that process was good for me, I think. And I also think that it's good for other people if you talk about your experience honestly, because I've had a lot of people say to me, that they grew up in similar situations or, everybody's got a story like this. They can relate to it.
There's someone in my family. I told you about this. There's someone directly in my family who had almost the exact same thing happen to them. The first thing I did was I got on the phone and I said, you're not going to believe this record that's coming out. I read him the piece that was right in front of me and he really couldn't believe it. And, even the picture of you on the front, somehow it conveys quite a lot without really being overly demonstrative. It's a perfect picture of you somehow in terms of, here I go, I'm going to tell it like it is.
It's hard in a way, talking about the record is way easier than looking at that picture. For me, looking at that picture is like, it's fine, but I'm just like, oof, like I really gave myself a reminder, I guess, for the future, because it's just like this thing you have to look at over and over again if you're selling your records at your shows and blah, blah, blah. So it's funny to have that, but I'm okay with that. It's okay. And that was the idea. I think the idea was just, to just kind of like put a pin in that,
it does that for sure. For me, I don't know how you're, supposed to convey all of the feelings that are on this record. They're very specific feelings in a photograph, but you do somehow, the expression. So just in terms of, because I had no idea, what I figured was that in 2016, all these secrets came out and then your parents got divorced. But you had then corrected me at the beginning of this. How long then was your family living with the exposed secrets before the relationship ended?
Yeah, that's the crazy thing. It's like my dad, like I was saying, in 2005 or whatever. It was like, oh, I'm going into rehab. I have a speed addiction. And then it started to come out, oh, my dad's gay. Okay. And then it was like this thing where my dad, his addiction kind of morphed into NA. He gamed the same way that addiction is all about like gaming the system and like kind of control. Kind of became his thing. So he got really seriously involved with NA and became like an NA sponsor and all that for years. And my mom and him stayed together. My mom and him, as I understand it, as my mom tells me, they had an understanding from the beginning. They were married in '64, I believe. And my mom knew he was gay at the beginning. I mean, my dad's, I guess, I don't know how, I don't know what he identifies as now.
I'm guessing he was bi, not gay, right? Or
yeah, I mean, I don't know what anything means anymore. I don't know how he identifies, but yeah, so my mom understood, that, and they had this arrangement. She thought, I hope my mom doesn't mind me saying this. I think she didn't feel betrayed by him sleeping with men. That was their understanding. They had been living an unconventional marriage the entire time. And, my family was not a super conventional family. All my parents' friends were gay men, which is interesting. Yeah, my parents had kind of an open marriage as long as it was with men. So then I found out about all that when I was like 30 in 2005. And then they stayed together for quite a while because my mom was like, well, my mom was much more upset. The drugs and the danger of that. And my dad's HIV positive also. So I don't think he would mind people knowing that. I hope not. So that was much more of the fact that it was more about my dad's health and safety, really. And then when he was like supposedly sober, it was like, okay, everything's okay.
So in 2005, she became aware that there was a drug issue and had no idea before?
No, it's not like my mom had no idea. I mean, my dad was in the record business in the 70s.
Right.
My dad's he's always been into partying, and he was a real early user of psychedelics and stuff. Both of them were. And, drugs were part of their lifestyle, but my mom gave it up when she started meditating. Strangely, my dad continued to use drugs and meditate. So yeah, it wasn't like a total shock, but I think my mom didn't realize the level and the kind of drugs he was using. So he was really into speed and ketamine when he first went into rehab. And then he supposedly cleaned up. So then it was like another, 10 years or something of like, well, they're still together. I don't understand how this works, but they were, they made it work. And I was living with that. And then in 2015 or so, 2016, it just started to like really unravel in terms of like my dad's behavior just became very, very erratic and just sort of like, it just was like not clear what was going on. Like I think he was ODing and stuff and he was getting into, heroin and stuff. So around the time of As If Apart and when I was finishing up that record, that was kind of when I just stopped talking to him because it was just like, I mean, I remember working on As If Apart, like being in my studio, trying to finish this record. And it's just like every day, just getting this like fucking like 30 texts from my dad that are just insane, just needing things, insanity, just the type of, just addict shit. It was just really distracting. And I felt like that was something that I couldn't say at the time, but it was like, I'm sure the label was probably wondering, why is Chris taking so long making this record? And it's like, I was just dealing with the most insane situation.
Yeah, but this is the shortest gap between records.
That's true, actually. Yeah, that's true. It would have been much less. Honestly, it would have been much less if I wasn't dealing with all this. And then I'm trying to remember the chronology exactly, but there was somewhere in there, it was like, okay, he's going into rehab. And my mom is finally like, me and my sister were like, finally, like, we got to get my mom out of here because, their finances. I mean, there was just a lot of reasons. I stopped talking to my dad because I remember around this time, it was like, we were trying to move my mom out of this apartment. My dad's away at rehab. We got to get her out by the end of the month. And their house is just like insane. And I borrowed my dad's car. And I get this message. I've been driving my dad's car around, just like taking shit to Goodwill and doing all this kind of nonsense. And then I'm getting this text, Chris, there might be something in the car. You should look under the mat. And my dad thinks he left some heroin in the car. It's like stuff like that where I was just like, okay, I'm done. I can't, like, he's ready for me to go to prison for him. Like he waited like weeks to tell me this. I'm driving his car around, and it's like that kind of shit where I was just like, okay, I'm done. So it's like derailing my music life to say the least. So as I'm writing all these songs, it's just like, this is what I'm dealing with. This is what my songs are about, really. And it just felt insane at that point to be like, okay, I'm not going to be like evasive when I talk about this record. Even if the songs might still be oblique, it was just like, I'm not going to like beat around the bush and say, oh, it's about my family. It was like, I'm done covering for them and with being discreet,
Was there a little bit of, because you got pulled through the ringer because of his lifestyle, was there a little bit of revenge in, discussing it publicly?
That's a good question. I mean, obviously, I'm talking about, I can feel my blood pressure rising. I mean,
and I see it.
Yeah.
do.
Obviously, I'm still, I'll always be angry. But revenge, I don't know. I mean, I want to say no, but I couldn't say for sure that that's 100% no. You might be right there on some level. I mean, it was just a way of like shedding my. I hope, my best version of this that I can present to the world is like I hope that I was just shedding my enabling responsibilities. It was more of a way of like looking at my whole music making practice because yeah, I was reading all this stuff about addiction and like the different roles that people play in enabling, in families of addicts. I learned about this, the role of like, there's the person that just sort of disassociates. And I was like, that is me. When I learned about this role, I forget what they all are. I'm sure people listening there's probably people know way more about this than I do. I'm not that well read in the addiction
Did you go
theories,
to
but
Al-Anon meetings and
I
families of
tried.
addicts?
Yeah, I went to one or two Al-Anon meetings. It was like one or two was good enough for me. I didn't really want to keep going back. But yeah, there's a lot there. I mean, for sure. And it helps some people. And I think it's great if it helps people. But yeah, this was probably something I got there. It was like, oh yeah, I'm the disassociating person. And started thinking about my whole life as a musician and how music, kind of touching back on what we were talking about earlier, I think, music was part of my sort of like disassociating and just kind of checking out from this trauma that was going on for me.
And did he sit you down and explain to you that, I'm gay and I have a drug problem?
No, no, that's the thing.
Okay.
I mean, this is like years of me gradually getting him to talk about things. It was so difficult for him to even to share the stuff with me. It really took a long, long time, but eventually, bit by bit,
2005?
I would say for 10 years, over the course of like 10, 11 years, the picture was gradually starting to flesh out. And I'm sure I'll never totally, obviously, we never understand our parents or
No,
anyone
my,
really.
my parents
Yeah.
are ciphers to me.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
mysteries to me, and
Yeah.
I don't know the complex layers of desire or frustration or disappointment. I see in the day to day, I see it play out. And it's terrifying to me, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Absolutely terrifying. One of my biggest fears is to be around people that I love who are my day-to-day life and them being completely unknown to me somehow.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's so I can really relate to that. I saw Night of the Living Dead when I was in college and it triggered these. I've had these recurring zombie nightmare dreams for like 20, 30 years or whatever. They've kind of morphed into a different thing now, but it's something like what you're talking about. It's sort of like this idea that someone you think just turns around and is like, wow, there's something totally different. It totally makes sense. And it shed a lot of light on my music making process too, because I felt like music was my way of reaching out to my dad and trying to like, not only get his attention, but trying to like engage with him. It was my like last hope at like sort of having some kind of friendship with him and some relationship. And I mean, even down to like on Overgrown Path, trying to get him to play open theme with me and just the whole, like my whole path as a musician.
But the reason I'm kind of trying to dig at the timeline is only for aesthetic purposes, because
Okay.
if the first level of the explanation came in approximately 2005, and we could pin that back to you leaving Deerhoof and starting to write songs that were more immediately connective and had melodic centers to them, it's almost like this horrible, inarguably terrible pain gave birth to your solo career. Like Joni Mitchell, she put a girl up for adoption. She had a girl before she was a singer-songwriter. And the pain of that gave birth to her entire career as the greatest female singer-songwriter, probably in my estimation of all time. And then when she reconnected with the daughter, her career stopped because there was no use for it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. And I think, for example, in my family situation, it's like that pain was there from day one. And I kind of look at it as like almost like a beautiful thing that there was a seed that finally blossomed by the time I came to some kind of understanding about it.
So to me, this is your blood on the tracks. I mean, it has similar feeling. It has a similar disappointment in family relationships, sort of a song cycle vibe to it. Okay, Song They Play. Man, what an opener. The thing I'm first hit with is those pools of shimmering guitar, and it really conveys very strongly these attempts that you're singing about to get your dad's attention, and sort of being shut out from the world that your parents had going on, which was playing out behind closed doors.
I was trying to just kind of like touch the earliest memories that I had, just like houses we lived in and stuff. And like there was this time my dad, like a partner of my dad's came and lived with us for like a month. He's kind of a famous artist now. He was not famous at the time. And his name is Paul Tech. He stayed in our guest room for like a month. And I just remember this being just like, who is this guy? What? I sensed that he was really close to my dad. And it was like, I felt like this kind of threat a little bit from him. And my parents were always joking about how I didn't like Paul Tech and stuff. He made some artwork while he was staying with us. He used to paint ceiling fixture, like that glass kind of like bowl thing that goes over like your ceiling lamp. Mm-hmm. He would like take them down and he was painting them like glow, like earth, like blue and white like the earth. And my mom was saving them. My sister and I made her throw them out because they were, we were so confused and sort of freaked out by this visitor. But it's like, those would have been worth like $1 million now.
Oh God.
Those really, he's like this really important artist. So just like weird memories like that. I was trying to just go back to write that song. So that's what I think of when I'm thinking of that song.
It's an incredible opener. Really the first bunch of songs out of the gate are like, whoa, just one after the other. Edit Out, which is the first single. Just love that line, people want a lot. It's so simple. Mm-hmm. That might have been, a reaction against what you were talking about, being frustrated about potentially being misunderstood. You can't misunderstand. People want a lot. Green Eyes.
I just was thinking about, like men in my family and how we kind of pass on toxic masculinity or whatever, or just the kind of bullshit, the kind of like lack of openness with each other and just how that went down in my family.
And then with House Carpenter, how do you wind up, notwithstanding the NRBQ cover that wound up on the single, how do you wind up with the only cover song in your catalog being the longest song in your catalog? We
played it at this festival in Guerneville, I believe it was. Some of our friends were there and they had taken some LSD and it was like, I remember them, everybody was just like, loved that song. I remember people really responding to that song. And so I just filed that away for like, okay, this song works. This arrangement works. Also, to be perfectly honest, I mean, I'm such a slow songwriter and making records takes so long for me. It was like, great, like 6 minutes. That's one song I don't have to write.
Right.
It's a traditional, so I don't have to worry about getting clearance for it. It just was perfect. It fit perfectly.
Yeah.
So some of that was pragmatic too. But yeah, I liked how it fit with the other songs. So.
Yeah, it's great. So that caps the first side. And then we kick off with side 2, Twice in a Lifetime. Love the lyric, with a crack in the mirror light into minus we glow.
Yeah, that's a Zach Phillips-ism. He wrote those lyrics. I couldn't.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I love it too.
It's beautiful. This final stretch, it really sends it home. This, with Heavy Weather Sailing and No Time to Say Goodbye, these three wrap it up so beautifully. It's sad throughout. I mean, from the very first note, a gray cloud gathers over the record. But man, by the time you reach No Time to Say Goodbye, whoa, it's intense. And you spell it out with the fun is over, goodbye, my darling. Consider this your second 5-star review.
Thank you.
To me, this is really a masterpiece. It's the whole package. I'm a sucker for like a song cycle, but we all have, maybe not the specifics of what you're laying out there, but we all have these sort of like, what did that look mean? Coming from someone you've known your whole life, and those kinds of eerie family dynamics and people hiding behind things and who exactly are our loved ones. It's something that everyone can relate to, and everyone has varying components of these kinds of things in their life. And I've heard you talk about if it can help other people with what they have going on, then it was also worth doing. It was another component that made it an attractive aesthetic option for you. And sometimes I'll hear a record and get an immediate thrill hearing someone experience growth and movement in real time. And to me, this is a step up in multiple ways. Hard five.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Dave Gebroe. I threw my career as a licensed hearing instrument specialist in the trash, sold my house, and moved to the East Coast with my wife and 4-year-old son in order to focus on making the ultimate podcast for music obsessives thrive. Now I need your help. Although Discograffiti is rated in the top 2% of all podcasts globally, the economics of this thing are tricky. Becoming a member of Discograffiti's Patreon gives you access to over 100 more exclusive episodes. And moving forward now every Sunday for only $5 a month as a private first class, you get our new weekly show by and for Discograffiti's Patreon family, the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast. As a lieutenant, you get an ad-free, substantially elongated director's cut of every episode. And you'll be getting the shows a few days earlier than the general populace, which is designed to make you feel even more special than you already are. So when you become a major, you'll be getting access to the ultimate director's cuts of all our sprawling, super deep dive episodes. As far as I'm concerned, these super cuts have absolutely everything that was meant to be heard. Plus, you get yours before the lieutenants get theirs. But that ain't it. You also get all our other series, like Discograffiti's Top 10, our Buried Treasure Show, Rock Cousteau, our Slag Off Show, Queasy Listening, and exclusive limited series like The Private Press with Paul Major. And if you've got no financial worries to speak of, keep in mind that some of the higher Patreon tiers allow you to actually advertise on the show, choose the bands we cover, or even some of the guests we get. For the price of a cup of coffee a week, you can ensure my family's fed, build a music library that'll be the envy of your block, and connect to a thriving community of music maniacs all at the same time. Don't risk feeling badly about yourself by not giving. Patreon.com/Discograffiti. Once again, that's Patreon.com/Discograffiti. 2020, Physical Address comes out as the single. Did that song give birth to Paint a Room? Did Paint a Room start life as a pandemic record?
Yeah, for sure. We had just moved into a small apartment, or, my studio became just kind of like a little room in an apartment, and it was like, lockdown. So I was just trying to make something where I could do it all myself, without making too much noise. So yeah, Physical Address, Mexican Summer invited me to do this single series they were doing. Yeah, it was just great to have an assignment. Like, some people had a lot of time on my hands. So yeah, that was the first song I started writing for Paint a Room. I think the next one after that was Damage. It all grew out of, that time of just sitting at the piano and all that was happening then.
I don't know if this is way later when other people came to play on the record, but your process is different, right? Letting them fill in their own parts as they saw fit, and you're ceding control.
Yeah. I mean, this was the first time I had made demos and given them to bandmates, and then we played the songs live. I mean, except actually, House Carpenter was maybe one of the exceptions, but usually, if we're playing the song live, it's like it's already come out. Whereas this was like, okay, I'm going to make demos. I kept them really, really basic with just drum machine, bass guitar, keyboards, and like tried to make it something I thought we could play live. I didn't get super into the weeds about, exactly how to play it. But yeah, this was like a new process.
Am I mistaken? Is Physical Address a return to shoving salsa into your sausage grinder of influences?
Yeah, maybe. I'm trying to think of, I don't know what I was getting into. I started getting into a lot of music from Uruguay. I was listening to a lot of this guy, Eduardo Mateo. I'm not sure about salsa, but could be.
The funny thing is what we talked about earlier about raising the bar for yourself with a self-titled record, demanding a new level of honesty from you and transparency in the lyric writing. First thing I did when I got the promo of the record was I went straight to the lyric sheet to see if that eponymous thing was going to keep forcing your path forward there. And the first lines that greeted me was, at the hospital, in the middle school, anywhere you look, someone's power over someone else.
Damage to me is like the most important song. I wanted to put that song first. And I'm proud of that song. I feel like that's my best song in some ways.
That you ever wrote? Is that your favorite?
I don't know. I mean, right now, I'm proud that it kind of is like, it worked in ways that a lot of my other songs haven't. It came together kind of naturally, musically, the arrangement. Actually, the version that's on the record is pretty much the demo that I made. I fleshed it out a little bit, and Jay replaced the keyboards that I had.
And that's Jeff Parker, right?
Jeff Parker wrote the arrangements. It's more of a song about the outside world than most of my songs have been.
Right.
I've tended to write a lot about my own experience.
To be fair, you wrung the towel dry in 2019. So the title track, I find myself, now that I've heard it a bunch of times, as it comes to the end, I can't wait to hear those flute trills wrap it up with a nice bow at the very end. You must love that, how it comes in for a nice, perfect landing at the end.
The song in general, I was thinking about this middle-aged perspective that I have right now, and sort of, I don't know, some of the disillusionment that I think I feel sometimes. And I think that disillusionment is mostly about my own limited understanding of like the way that I frame memory for myself in terms of these boxes and sort of concrete, the kind of the way that we sort of narrativize our lives. It just doesn't always feel good. It doesn't make sense sometimes. And I think this song is a self-reflection on the way that I sort of limit meaning, like limit the meaning of my experience for myself. You could make a painting that's a representation of a room. We also paint the walls of a room. So I was kind of playing on this double meaning. And then my friend Jess gave me this painting that she did when she was a kid that's on the album cover. It's a drawing, but it's like, it's a painting of a room that stops halfway through. And I was just like, it was so perfect. it was just weird. I couldn't have imagined a better thing. It was accidental also. It worked with this idea of like how we reconstruct our experience for ourselves.
At this age, especially, I find it incredibly difficult grappling with my incessant need to decorate my reality when for everyone around me, it seems like it's enough for it just to be there. But for me, it's never, ever enough. There has to be all these mental ornamentations hung around it to make it palatable. That's how it strikes me, or at least these are the mental fantasias I go on when I hear these lyrics.
Yeah, I think that's what the song is about.
Son Ever. So this is the first song that I heard from the record. And this is about, again, external reality, right? This is about a transgender child who you know?
Yeah, I was just writing from experience, from my own experience of watching, a kid that was having a hard time, person I care about. For some people, it's like life or death, A lot of trans kids don't survive. A lot of trans people don't survive.
There's a very strange juxtaposition of influences for me that I hear that I'm sure are unintended. For me, it feels like American Indian meets Sesame Street.
Okay.
I don't know why, but that's what I hear when I hear it.
The feedback that I've gotten was like, sounds like The Dead, which I kind of felt a little bit too when I was making it.
And then to go on my Chris Cohen mixtape of songs to kill yourself by, the track to pull from this record would be Cobb Estate. That's definitely the wrist slitter on this one. And like I said, I'm a huge fan of your sad music. Every time this one starts, there's guitar pulls. I mean, they just sound like teardrops to me.
This is kind of like an homage to a musician from Uruguay who I really love named Mariana Engel. Just kind of like a little snapshot of my day.
This is way up there for me on the record. One of my favorite juxtapositions in your entire catalog is Laughing with Wishing Well, because after Laughing, Wishing Well, I imagine that the only mandate for this song, or the main mandate, is to write it with a caffeinated BPM in mind, because it is almost cartoonishly hyper. I would compare it to like early Feelies, Crazy Rhythms era.
Oh, cool. Yeah. It started as a halftime. It was like boom, ba-do-do, da-do-do. It wasn't boom, boom. It was just like boom, da-do-do, da-do-do. And then I started adding drums, and I started thinking about like the Meat Puppets 2 era, and sort of like some almost like kind of cowboy thing. I don't know where that came from. I guess the bass line sort of suggested this is kind of 1/5, like kind of walking bass thing. And then it just turned into a Meat Puppets jam when I made it double time.
Night or Day?
I don't know. That song was just a kind of adding one part onto another. I couldn't even tell you where that came from or how that happened. That was a demo that I did early on and then played it with the band.
Is that in the running for a single? I don't know what's been considered for singles.
There's a video, and that'll be the next single.
It's possibly the most pop-friendly song on the entire record.
But see, I was actually surprised. I mean, I wouldn't have necessarily thought that because it's kind of long and it has all these weird atonal parts and stuff. But at least it starts off like a pop song. Actually, the label really wanted it to be a single from the get-go, and I resisted a little bit because I thought it sounded a little bit too much like my old stuff. I think that one is the most like my older records, but they won out.
It's a great song. I mean, you could go in so many different directions with songs to pull. Randy's Chimes is the biggest grower for me. I love this song. It's a really interesting closer because the record at the very end feels like it kind of darts off and wanders with vague intentions into the night. It's this sort of quasi-waltz, and I love how disjointed the verses and choruses don't naturally feel like they connect, but yet they do. And it's like a wind-up toy that's always winding itself back up, back to life. And it's now one of my favorites. It didn't start off that way. Then after hearing it maybe the third or fourth time, it made so much sense. It skitters out in a hard left at the end.
Yeah, it's kind of like another sort of impressionistic slice of life kind of thing. I was describing our next door neighbor where we were living at the time. Used to, I don't know, in the middle of the night, we'd hear him singing karaoke. And I'm sure he was by himself. It would just be like 3 a.m. And he was just like, belting out Dancing Queen. And that's where the song came from. His name's Randy. I never actually met him, but Kate talked to him once, I think. And he had these wind chimes over I was blowing and stuff. And it was just like, it just came out of that. And I wrote that song on bass, the boom, 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 boom. I made up playing, there was a bass that used to just sit around in the backstage at Zebulon. So for a long time, it was just called Zebulon bass. Yeah, I don't know how the chorus happened. I just put the two pieces together, I guess.
I like the idea of these two things that are jammed, like almost uncomfortable bedfellows are jammed together, and then find a way to coexist. And the thing kind of springs to life, mainly because of the opposition. So it's another great record. Here's my mini review. You're trying new things we haven't heard on the last three, although I'd know who it was the second you put it on. You're adding ingredients into the soup in lieu of total overhaul style change, because it ain't broke. I like what you're doing. You know, it's another new bag, but it's the same thing, thank God. And I give it 4.5 stars. I love this.
Thank you.
And like I told you, you know, as far as, you know, a top album, you know, you could make a case for any of them, but I'm going to personally go with the eponymous one. Nice. I just think it's a bold work that's got all the hallmarks of you as an incredible tunesmith, but the package around it and the task that you set yourself, everything about it is a home run for me.
Wow. Well, it's probably my worst selling.
Is it really?
Yeah, I think so.
Wow.
So you got good taste.
People are idiots.
Thank you so much for all this attention you've given my music. I'm extremely flattered.
I really love it. I'm obviously a very big fan. Here's the part where you shamelessly get to plug and promote anything. You're going on tour. The record came out July 12th, right?
Yep.
What are the plans with it?
We're going to Santa Cruz, LA, Joshua Tree, or I should say Pioneer Town, Pappy and Harriet. I've never been there.
Great place.
I'm excited for that one. Yeah, we're going up to the Northwest in September, and October will be some East Coast to Midwest shows, and then Europe in November, December. Yeah, I would love it if people heard this record, and I hope it holds some interest. And I have a new band to unveil that's all Bay Area people, because I moved to the Bay Area last year, just as I was finishing the record. So yeah, I got a whole new band. They're great, lovely people, lovely musicians, and I'm just looking forward to continuing this thing.
I love this thing that you're doing. You are definitely, unquestionably, one of the greatest people writing songs today. You just have a great grasp of melody. There's something about your voice and the way you sell your songs where everything feels honest. And, you know, that's in short supply, even with some of the better music now. And I really appreciate it. Please keep it up, no matter what pace your output arrives at.
All right. Well, I will try. Thank you so much.
All right. That about does it. If you enjoyed this episode, then Venmo Gebroe. Come on. Venmo Gebroe at David-Gebroe. Please keep in mind this is entirely how I support my wife and 5-year-old son, so don't risk feeling badly about yourself by not giving. Venmo me a tip at David-Gebroe. Okay, here's the week up ahead. This Sunday, our weekly show within a show, the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast, drops for our Patreon's private tier. These are real people with talent and a burning fire deep inside, just like you and I. Then come Monday, we've got a very special episode for our Patreon's major tier. It's the story of Jesus 2, the absolutely true and harrowing tale of the collapsed 1994 feature film that I attempted and failed to complete right out of college. Get ready for a boatload of essential Dave Gebroe background info. And then on Wednesday, our Patreon buried treasure show, Rock Cousteau, is back for our lieutenant tier. And this time I brought a special guest, Kurt Rolski, to help fill in the blanks behind one of my favorite debut records of all time, his 1988 self-titled LP, Ultra Vivid Scene. It's going to be a non-stop deluge of must-hear listening for our Patreon family this week, so don't miss out. And then come Friday, our public show is a long-form review of Cindy Lee's Diamond Jubilee, by far my favorite album of the year, with special guest Joe Kennedy and, trust me, a slew of jaw-dropping surprises. A heartfelt Discograffiti thanks goes out to my beautiful wife and son, Jen and Mason, Chris Cohen, Rudy Fishman, Becky Boyd, my incredibly loyal fans, and especially the entire Patreon community, the Soldiers of Sound. I love every last one of you, and this show would not exist without you, my friends. Speaking of friends, it's high time for some new ones. They're in our Facebook group, Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound. That's the best way to find out what's coming up on the show, but there's a hell of a lot more. You get recaps of the day in music history, the ability to pitch questions to guests, polls that put you in the driver's seat on guest and band decisions, and access to a thriving creative hub if you're looking for a collaborator. So make sure you don't miss out. You can find the link to the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound Facebook page right there in the show notes. And if you don't mess with the Zuck, no sweat. Just email me at info@discograffiti.com and I'll keep you in the loop. So now that it's done and you want more, another way to dive even deeper into the wonderful world of indie pop is to leap headfirst into my interview with Kula Shaker about the albums that shaped them. That's episode 139. The 4-part Mark Robinson series, that's episodes 128, 130, 135, and 136. The 3-part Will Cullen Hart Olivia Tremor Control series, that's episodes 131, 132, and 133. Vashti Bunyan rating her entire catalog, that's episodes 103 and 104. An interview with Foxygen's Jonathan Rado, that's episode 75. Rado rates Rundgren, that's episodes 37 and 40. Unquestionably the greatest Lou Barlow interview of all time, which is episode 62. Lou rates the Zombies, episodes 59 and 60. Anthony Fantano rates the Velvet Underground, that's episodes 32 and 33. Pitchfork contributor Jen Pelly rates the Raincoats, episode 15, and Cocteau Twins, episode 3. And of course, be sure to mark your calendars, because next Friday, August 16th, we're coming at you with Cindy Lee's Diamond Jubilee. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. And so, from now till then, don't let our youth go to waste, lads and ladies. It's Discograffiti!